And I'll turn my screen off too once I hand it over to Bailey. Hi, friends who are joining us. We're glad you could make it today. We'll get started in another minute or so.
I always feel like there should be background music, elevator music.
I offered to sing for you, but nobody wants that. People would sign off.
Oh my goodness. All right, I'm going to go ahead and start us right at the top of the hour, and people may be joining us as the session goes on. Good morning, everyone. I'm Shauna Haley. I'm the host for today's webinar, but really that just means I'm welcoming you to the event. What we're talking about today, employee recognition programs in local government. And we all know local government employees, including communication staff, work very hard, and a lot of times our work doesn't get a lot of recognition. But we know that it's really important for employee morale, retention, and really your organization's success. We have to compete with all other workplaces as well. And if you're wondering how you do this and how you remain a competitive environment, you have tuned into the right webinar, because that's what we're focusing on today. And in fact, put together a session that features some TAMI Award winners, and that seems very timely since we're in TAMI Award application season. Again, we have a good crew, and our host who's going to moderate our conversation is Bailey Ragsdale. She's the Marketing and Communications Specialist for the City of Murphy and a TAMI Award winner herself. So I'm going to turn it over to her, but before I do, just a little bit of logistics for you all. We've left the chat open, so you can feel free to comment and have conversations. But if you have a question for your panelists, we're going to answer your questions, but you need to do that through the Q&A, because we're afraid we might miss those if those get dropped in the chat with conversations back and forth. So use the Q&A for your questions and chat for everything else. And with that, I'll hand it over to Bailey.
All right, thank you so much. I am so excited about this. We've got Nadine Bonewitz from the city of San Marcos and Jared Wise from Lakeway, Texas. Nadine, she has a television and news background. She earned her bachelor's of journalism from the University of Texas and a master of science in criminal justice from Texas State University. Jared is the director of communications for the city of Lakeway near Austin, if you don't know where that is. He oversees a small team that handles community outreach and engagement, marketing, social media, the city website, and the city's internal communication efforts. So his plate's not full at all. He also serves as the regional director for TAMIO Region Number 5, which is serving most of the Central Texas area. So real quick, fun tidbit just from the city of Murphy. When we were brainstorming ideas for sessions last year, I was like, man, wouldn't it be nice to have employee recognition? Because we unfortunately weren't doing anything. Since then, we have actually gotten a new HR director. She has a new employee, and we have a new city manager, and their huge focus is employee engagement. So they are also excited to learn about all the fun things that we have to talk about. So without further ado, just real quick, can you tell us about who oversees your employee recognition in your cities? I don't know who wants to start. Jared?
Sure. Well, first of all, I'd like to introduce Jessica C. So she's our HR communication specialist. I thought she'd be great to have on this webinar today because she's kind of our hybrid between communications and HR. She actually works closely with HR, but she develops our internal communications like our newsletter. And she also heads our LEAP program, which is our Lakeway Employee Appreciation Program. So I thought she would be great to kind of like jump on board for this particular session. But what was your question again? I kind of got sidetracked, maybe.
No worry. Thank you for introducing her.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about who oversees your employee recognition.
Oh, of course, and it's our comms team. So our comms and admin folks typically oversee that, our internal comms. But like I said, Jessica pretty much takes the lead on that at the moment.
Right. It's really, working a dual role with the city of Lakeway for both communications and HR kind of goes hand in hand, especially when it comes to our employee appreciation program.
Very good. Nadine, how about y'all?
Yeah, at the City of San Marcos, we're kind of structured to where there's engagement and feedback kind of at all levels. So our city manager's office has a team that helps implement different strategies for employee engagement and recognition. They're actually working on some new ideas right now. But there's also a internal group that's made up of representatives from each department. Sounds kind of similar to maybe what some other folks have, that kind of just have an ongoing conversation and discuss different ways to highlight different departments and different staff just to make it really effective. I think on our end, we've been really fortunate that our city management, similar to what you've indicated over there, is very dedicated to making sure that employees feel recognized and are recognized for their efforts. I think our city manager always says that her number one asset is the team. So we've had a lot of really positive feedback from city management across the organization, specific to employee recognition and retention and recruitment and all of those different efforts.
And same with Nadine. I mean, we have a really strong buy-in from our city manager and also our city council. So I think that's really key to making a good employee appreciation program for your cities, is just having that buy-in from your leadership.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't currently have buy-in from your leadership, do you have any advice for people who might want to start that conversation?
Yeah, a good point is that committee that we created. So we created that, it's called, again, the Lakeway Employee Appreciation Program, short for LEAP program. So basically it's a committee of different individuals from different departments that come together and formulate ideas for how to engage with staff. We've created that pretty much out of thin air because we needed something to kind of help support our staff. So that was a great opportunity, and it actually brought everybody together, because once we created that committee, they started thinking of fun ideas for our staff to do, but also special days. Like we have, police week, and we have municipal court week, and everybody has a special week or special day for their city. They found ways to celebrate those, like either give a cupcake for our IT professional for IT Professionals Day, or even just a signed card. Just some simple things that make staff just appreciative. Because I remember when you gave Leonard our IT Professionals Day.
He was our first one whenever we formed this program. He was our first one to receive something. And he was just thrilled to be recognized that day. And we just kept it going after that, recognizing, different departments on their special week or month or day, and found it to be a really good start to the program.
And once that was built, it was pretty much easy for the buy-in from city management, because they saw that staff are appreciative of these little things. And it's not these big things. And I think a lot of people get confused. They're like, I have to do something massive for my staff. It's really the little things that actually work. Like I said, a little cupcake or a little card or something on a special day really makes a difference. And leadership sees that. They hear the staff talk in the break room or wherever else. They're like, oh, there's something up with this. So we ended up getting our budget doubled this past year for our elite program. It was $7,000, now it's $14,000.
Yes.
We're a small city of 20,000, by the way, so some budgets will probably be a lot bigger. But they saw the value in that and decided to up our budget too, to think of more fun things for our staff. And council buys in too, because council comes to some of those events that we do as well, and they see that. So again, it's starting small and kind of working up. But if leadership sees the success that you're doing, put it into action right away, and they'll see that, and then they'll do more buy-in later.
I'll add to that, just discussing budgets and all of that kind of stuff. I think one thing to keep in mind is what's, the cost and benefit of doing something like this. If you're looking at it, and Jessica, you may know more than me from the HR perspective of just what's the cost of recruiting, training, retaining an employee or bringing somebody new on and getting them up to speed versus what does it cost you to invest that little bit of extra effort into your team. And I think that's something that, you know, our TAMI Award submission was really centered on a employee engagement survey that we developed. The cost of that survey, if we hadn't put it together ourselves, would have been upwards of $17,000. But I think our city management recognized, yeah, it's staff time and it's staff effort, and ultimately implementing some of the feedback we get is a cost to the city, but it's a lesser cost than what it would be to lose a bunch of folks because we're competing with private sector and maybe some folks who have a higher salary range on their job description. But we have all these other different great things that we offer as a city as well.
Those are awesome examples. So diving deeper just a little bit into some more specific examples. I know, Jared, you kind of went into the cupcakes and everything like that. Do you have any other examples of what your city is doing specifically?
Yeah, in fact, we recently started, our city manager recently started implementing employee appreciation quarterly luncheons. So that's also a great opportunity for different departments to basically be able to praise their staff for different things. One of the complications in the government industry is that you have such varying personalities and varying departments, you know, that it makes it challenging to try to find something that's consistent, that celebrates everybody without someone getting ticked off about, you know, oh, why did they get celebrated for helping an old lady across the street when I did this massive parks project and, you know, and I was overlooked. So those employee appreciation luncheons are helpful because each department stands up and says, you know, this, you know, recently Tony did this and, you know, Claire did this. And then the next department comes up and says the same thing. They get their service pins if they've been in service for 5-10 years, etc. And then council also participates in that too. So again, you're getting that upper, it's not just staff, you also need to think about your elected officials. Because if they see the value that you're doing and the value you're putting towards the staff, that's going to help with numerous things. They're going to give you a bigger budget. They're going to help, you know, when it comes to staff salary increases during budget time, they're going to be like, hey, we need to fully support our staff. They're doing amazing work out there. So it really helps, you know, beyond just recognition. It actually helps with salary, benefits, packages, et cetera, down the road. So really consider those and maybe doing like a quarterly staff, or even, you know, maybe like once or twice a year, doing a staff meeting where you celebrate each department.
We have some similar initiatives that we do here at the city. There's they do a summer and a spring picnic, so they'll bring a cone of ice to come and invite everybody to just have kind of a relaxed get together lunch. There's usually like a washer tournament, that kind of stuff. We do an annual event that's called Kudos. So it's an appreciation event where maybe I worked really closely with somebody maybe in parks on a project. So I can recognize them. I can spend $1 on a little snack or whatever it is and a little note, and it gets sent to them. That money then goes back into funding some of our lunches and stuff like that. So that's the employee group that's pretty in tune with all of that stuff. What I'll say too, from our perspective and thinking about the survey that we rolled out as part of this award submission, one thing that we've learned is really the importance of follow through. And I think as communications professionals, we can all appreciate that, right? Sometimes you'll launch a survey and you'll hear feedback from the community where they've got fatigue because I filled out a survey and y'all didn't fix this one thing that I pointed out in the survey, right? Like we're all familiar with that. But what we, I think, really learned and emphasized in this initiative with our internal employees is the importance of that follow through. And then where we came in as communications is really finding the ways to emphasize where that follow through was for our staff. So everybody has that top of mind. So as an example, in our survey, we had, I think it was 60-something% of folks say, yeah, I really recognize the city's commitment to diversity and equity and inclusion. So how do we look at ways then with other departments, maybe the city manager's office, maybe HR, to highlight and maximize that? So we started changing the way we do email signatures to provide folks an opportunity to maybe highlight their own affiliations, either in recognitions that they've gotten or any of those types of things. So really trying to find ways where we can, even at a low cost sometimes, emphasize here's how we followed through with the feedback we got. I think that was important for us as well.
And I'd like to add to Nadine, because we also just recently did a staff survey. Ours is, people are going to laugh that's on this webinar right now, but we did through SurveyMonkey. But we figured out a way to make it as anonymous as possible. But we did get a lot of great feedback from that. We got really high praise for our newsletter and also the activities that our LEAP committee does. But you also identify, like Nadine says, you know, those elements that you can do to improve or make more consistent. So I think doing a staff survey, if you can do that, I think that's a great opportunity to really get that feedback from your staff of what they really like and want, but also to see what your successes are. You know, what are we doing really well that we just keep and maybe we just expand on? I would like to also show our kind of bridging a little bit off of like other stuff that we do, our newsletter. So we do, and I know many other cities do an internal newsletter. So ours is probably, you're probably like, oh my gosh, we do like a lot different, a lot better, or whatever, you know. So there's different ways you can do a newsletter, but I'm going to show, and I think Jessica does a fantastic job on this, but I'm going to show kind of the one that we do. I think you see the one that says the link, right? Do you see that, Bailey?
Yes.
Okay. I don't think I could. Oh, there we go. So this is just done through Canva. It's very easy. I mean, I think most people on this call know what Canva is. It's an easy program. We share this with our staff every month. Jessica does a great job creating these, but we make them as simple as possible to make sure we put a city manager note in there, put our calendar events, any kind of HR updates, staff updates, welcome messages to our new staff. I think that's always great to do. Any kind of congratulations, as you see at the bottom of that, you know, congrats to specific, you know, certifications or anything that they might have done to kind of better themselves. What's in the headlines, what's kind of new out there. We get updates from different departments on kind of activities.
Right, love that. We try to make this a collaborative newsletter so that everybody feels involved and it's really their newsletter focused on all of the different departments. That's always my goal each month. Sometimes we get more submissions than others, but you know, I'm always asking, please send me, you know, any kind of department updates that you have or any kind of recognition that you'd like to put in the newsletter. I think it's a great way for employees to feel appreciated when they see that.
And it's good to have that water cooler section in there too, because it really like lets staff, I mean, that was kind of a lighter version that you saw.
Yeah, this was one of our shorter newsletters. Sometimes they can get pretty lengthy, but
kind of see what staff are doing outside of their normal jobs. So we really kind of encourage that.
I really love the water cooler. I wrote that down. I feel like that.
One thing I was going to mention, we have
realm.
a kind of similar newsletter that we send out. And one thing that's included is if maybe like as a manager, somebody had a meeting with one of my employees that went really well and they'll send off an email. It's like, hey, I really enjoyed working with this person. Sometimes we'll include those in the newsletter as well so that other staff are kind of being exposed to the maybe behind the scenes or behind closed doors conversations that are really praising employees. I think that's been really well received as well.
And a consistency with it too. So we send ours every Friday around noon. I'm sorry, every month.
The first Friday of the month at noon.
At noon, there we go.
If at all possible.
Yeah, and so they know when to expect it. And it's on a Friday, so people are having fun that day and they read it. But again, our recent staff survey that we did, the link, which we call it because we're in a golf community, by the way. I hope you all get that. That actually newsletter got really high marks in our staff survey. People just, we love reading it. It's exciting. It's nice to see what's going on in the city. So just that general information, however you can formulate that in your city, is a good call, whether it's monthly, you know, bi-monthly, quarterly, whatever. I think it's really good to invest in doing some kind of survey or some kind of newsletter like this.
So something to share from the city of Murphy with our new folks that started. They actually got a resident email and 2 of our employees went above and beyond. Our building official came out on a weekend to help get the gas on with one of our residents. And it was right before the freeze. And so one of our customer service girls like helped coordinate it all, and they worked all day Saturday on it, and the city manager recognized them with a little paper plaque, and they also got 8 hours of vacation each. So that was added to their bank, and boy, that has really improved morale around here. They were shocked and excited, needless to say. So Jared, I do have a question about the employee survey. How often do you do those? And do you do follow-up ones? Like,
Question. Nadine will probably have a better response, but this is the first one we've done in a while. So I think we're going to do them more regularly now. We had some turnover in the past a little bit, so we kind of like determined a good time to kind of make sure we had a good stable staff to be able to do a good quality staff survey. So we'll more than likely do this at least once a year.
Yeah, I'll echo that. The one that we put out about a year ago was the first one we had done in about, oh, I don't even know. I'm not going to try to make up a number, but but I think there was commitment because the feedback that we received was so beneficial organizationally. So just a little bit of background on that survey. We hit a point where our vacancy rate as an organization was the highest it had ever been. So that survey was part of an initiative to, okay, how do we, for lack of a better term, how do we stop the bleed? How do we keep folks here? What do we need to do to try to meet employees where they are, recognize, are the benefits that we're offering even matching with what they are looking for, that type of stuff. So I think our vacancy rate has improved significantly since that survey went out, and since we started kind of implementing that first tranche of, here are some things that we've identified that we can just go ahead and start rolling out right away, a telework policy, a change to our dress code, those types of things. And there's commitment now because it was so beneficial, and we've seen just a marked improvement to keep doing those every year or so. I'm going to say 2 years because it is a time commitment to roll something like that out and get folks to take it and all of that kind of stuff. But I think 2-ish years maybe.
now with y'all's surveys, do y'all leave them open for like a week, a day, a month? How do y'all normally handle that?
I believe ours was open for, I want to say it was maybe 3 weeks. And in that time, we were taking every opportunity that we could to kind of market it to our staff. And again, I think here's where I'll say that the follow through on that was so important, because if folks don't feel like you're going to actually read this and sit down and take the time to look at what I've said, and we got some pretty honest feedback, for better or for worse. And I think it was important for us to continue to emphasize that every single one of those is going to be looked at and considered at all the levels. So if it was something that was specific to a department, even though they were anonymous, sometimes you can kind of get an idea just based on the response of maybe where this is coming from, or whatever the case may be. It was sent off to a director. If it was something of positive change that we can implement, it was taken to HR and said, okay, how do we make this work in our organization? So I think across the board, there was just a commitment to trying to make sure that all of that stuff was worthwhile, so that we got as much feedback and honest feedback as we could get.
And same with Nadine. Ours was about 2 weeks, and we just closed ours last Friday. So I have a meeting with our city management next week to kind of discuss the results of that. But same thing with Nadine. I mean, you see some in there that you're kind of like, oh, you cringe a little bit, or you're like, oh, okay, that's good feedback. But you have to realize that when you do those surveys, and not take it personally either. I mean, this is to help improve yourself, to help improve other departments. But yeah, I mean, and in making them as anonymous as possible, leaving them as open-ended as possible is the best, because the best feedback you get are in the comment section, not the ratings. It's the comment section that you're like, oh wow, I didn't even know that. So that's very interesting. So if you leave that as open-ended as possible, you'll get some good feedback.
Yeah. The old reporter trick too, of asking the same question in a couple of different ways, and maybe somebody kind of has a different take on the way it's phrased one way or the other, sometimes kind of helps too.
100%.
So as far as the results go, I know, with being a city, our records are open. Do y'all share all of your results with all of the employees? Do you make that available, or is it just leadership, or how do you handle that?
So in our case, we were, even when we were developing all of the questions and considering the survey, we were very aware of, the transparency and, the potential for PIRs, those types of things. So kind of the way we handled it is we weeded through some of the questions. If there were some that named a specific person and were maybe aggressive, because that happens, somebody's like, oh, I've got a space to say it, right? We kind of sectioned those off, but we tried to provide as many of the answers as we could. And when I say we sectioned those off, it was maybe 6 that it was like, ooh, no, that's pretty personal and pretty too direct. But otherwise, we put it on our employee portal online, the whole thing, so everybody could read all the different responses and see all of the feedback. I believe we even got some PIRs, so I think we did have to get some help from legal on those, just for that same thing of if somebody was particularly named or whatever the case may be. But I think that's something to keep in mind if you're looking at developing a survey. Some of the questions that you're asking, as we've kind of said, for better or for worse, you're going to get some feedback. So you have to be kind of honest with yourself of, are you willing to take that and use it to try to make the end goal or end result better, right?
Putting yourself in a pretty vulnerable spot, but the betterment of the organization.
Right.
Yeah, and same thing, it's like we still haven't determined how we're going to release this. So again, I meet with our management next week. The ideal version would be to release it to our staff just so they can see it. And for full transparency, I think that's important. But again, more than likely redacting any kind of personal stuff. There's not really any personal information, luckily, that nobody put in there. So, and the most recent one. But yeah, you do have to be careful about that, and you have to keep that in mind. Like any of the staff, or if you do community surveys or whatever you put out there, is it's potential to be open record. So you just have to always keep that in the back of your head.
So we do have a question about what kinds of questions, or if you can share some of the questions. Is that something that y'all are able to do? Y'all want to do that now, later?
Yeah,
I don't know that I have any of them handy, but I can get some.
Yeah, and I'd be happy to share a form that we submitted as well. So, in fact, is it better to just do it through email? How's best to share that?
I will ask Shauna here.
Sean is
She's the
attempting to
expert.
unmute. We can, if you want to create, maybe drop them into a Word document, and then we can put them up into Canva and create a
Perfect.
downloadable file that we add to the webinar recording.
Oh, perfect. Afterwards, right? Okay.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Right now, let me log off and yeah, I'm happy to share those. I think, at the end of the day, it's something that we talk about in all the TAMI stuff that I've been a part of. It's kind of one of those things of, we're all here to help each other. So I'm happy to share some of our questions as well.
So very cool. So as government employees, kind of changing the subject a little, we're limited to rules and restrictions that the private sector doesn't have, like, about gifts and things like that. How do you navigate that in respects to employee recognition?
So I would say that, yeah, I like to push the boundaries a little bit, but we do have an ethics policy. So it's basically $50 a day is our ethics policy. So we have an internal policy that we follow. So, but you also have to be careful. You can't give money. There's certain things that you have to be careful about, but simple things like small gift cards, like Starbucks gift cards, or, just regular cards, but like tangible products, stuff like, if someone likes flowers, like a flower pot or something, or if somebody likes, cookies, cookies.
Cookies are a big one. Yeah,
Cookies are big.
sure.
Yeah. Is that your biggest? What are your biggest?
Probably cookies. Any kind of lunch, breakfast tacos are always a hit too.
Breakfast tacos, yes.
And then just kind of branching off of that too, when we do our bigger events, I do try to calculate like how much are we spending for each employee on this specific event. I don't go over 50 for any employee. So even on the big events, we do keep track of that within our budget.
And if you do a shared experience, it's like, like a buffet dinner or something like that, that kind of counts as being kind of like not an individual gift. So there are things that you can kind of combine, but, part of this committee that we formed was formed from a corporate committee that I did in the past, which is called a fun committee. So, where in the corporate realm, you can create it any way you can. But,
Yeah.
you know, for the government realm, it's important to pick like different people from different departments to kind of culminate and bring together good ideas. So that's kind of a little example of the corporate versus government realm, I guess. But again, yeah, in the corporate realm, you can do anything. You can throw massive parties and alcohol and all kinds of stuff. We don't do any alcohol. We don't do anything like that because you have to be careful because the community sees your receipts.
Oh, yeah.
So just be careful about that and keep that in mind as well, that everything that you purchase is also considered open records potentially. So that, or your auditor or treasurer could look at that. So just be aware that, yeah, the smaller the item, the better, but it's those little, like I said in the very beginning, it's the smaller things that sometimes make the biggest impact. So really kind of don't think about this, oh, I have to get like this giant mural like created or something like that for my staff. No, maybe just like a cupcake or their favorite breakfast taco. It's those small things that really go a long way.
I'll say separate from that kind of stuff, some of those more tangible things. When we started rolling out some of the recommendations that we got from the survey, we did get some pushback in terms of what kind of perks you get as a government employee for our work from home policy or our telework policy, and for the compensation study that we did. So we brought in a consultant because we got a lot of feedback that, hey, I'm not getting paid to the level of my responsibility. So our city management had a consultant come in and do a very robust look at our compensation and our payment scale and all of that kind of stuff. And I think it kind of goes back to that thought of, you have to keep in mind what's the cost and the benefit. You know, if you're receiving that type of criticism and you're trying to have just an honest conversation to explain kind of, hey, we got so much feedback that folks want to be able to work from home a day or two a week, that it's worth it for us to roll something like this out, because then we don't have to try to recruit and compete and, you know, spend the cost of training and bringing on new folks. So it's always kind of that balance at kind of that other level too.
So kind of you touched on it a little bit, Nadine, of my next question. But I know with sometimes like some of our social media posts, we get comments of, you know, employees are having a lot of fun on the taxpayer's dollar, or like receiving perks for your job. How have you faced that and handled that?
I mean, I think it's kind of in those two specific examples. If we got some feedback from folks of like, well, why do you guys just get to work from home, and why are you getting pay raises for, you know, being public servants? And I think it's explaining it to them in that way. You know, we've had some pretty honest and transparent conversations with some members of our community about, hey, it's this, or here's the cost analysis of what it takes to not do something like this, to not take into account what our employees need, and just being pretty open and honest and transparent about what that looks like. Because at the end of the day, that's an impact to the taxpayer. It's an impact to our service, to our community. If we don't have the staff to do some of these really cool programs that you're used to, then, you know, our quality of life goes down all across the board. So just being really, really honest and open about, here's where we're at. You know, we're stuck here. We got to do something. And it's trying to be fiscally responsible and meet those needs as well.
And you have to be careful because, yeah, we use Instagram quite often for our fun things, like most folks do. But, you know, Facebook can get kind of trollish sometimes. You know, you have your people on there that just get cranky for sometimes no reason. So you have to be careful about that and be sensitive to individual people in your departments that might be called out for specific things. So we try to do group posts as much as possible. Jessica does a great job on our Instagram page. So, but intermixing. So it shouldn't be all about staff on your Instagram. Maybe a staff post and then what's going on in the community, what's a fun event, and then maybe a staff post. But if you mix and mingle, then you don't get as much as that criticism that you can potentially face. But if you do heavy staff, like if your Instagram just filled with all this fun staff photo stuff, then that's probably not going to go well for you. So you just have to, like I said, just mix it up pretty well. But again, kind of repeating what I said earlier, getting that elected official buy-in, you know, like from your council too. If they see all the great work you're doing, they say that in council meetings. So then the community hears it when it comes to budget season. So they're like, oh yeah, we want to support our staff. So it kind of trickles down into our community from our council, and they're very supportive of us, especially after seeing like what the LEAP committee's really done. So like I said, if you can kind of get that buy-in up to the council level, they'll do a lot of the work for you. So because they'll just support the staff, and then it kind of is this full circle moment.
And I will say too, being mindful of the way that you're posting and the language that you're using. So saying something like, you know, gearing up to serve the citizens of Lakeway. Here we are having this fun event, and going on to explain it a little bit more, putting it, you know, more in that positive resident focused language helps a lot too.
Good point.
So let's see. Is there something that you can share with the group that your organization has tried to implement with employee recognition, and it's either backfired or not gone as well as you had planned?
So
Juicy stuff.
so I'll say it didn't really backfire, but was part of our, when we were first trying to form the LEAP committee, one of the bigger challenges that we're faced with, and we actually left it with the LEAP committee to decide on it, was, do we do an employee of the year? Do we do an employee of the month? Do we do it by department? Do we do it as a whole? That completely pretty much just collapsed, because as we kept digging into it and the LEAP committee digged into it, we didn't want to create this like, oh, we're going to celebrate this one staff member in this department when other staff members are like, I did something amazing too, and I was completely overlooked. So that is not really anything that backfired. It's just something that didn't work for us, and I don't think that works for most cities. The corporate realm is one thing. Employee of the year, employee of the month works really well. Government gets tricky just because every department's so different. So it's like in trying to find ways to celebrate them. So like I said, I think the LEAP committee came up with a good idea of just celebrating those different days, and like municipal court week and police week, and, you know, trying to find fun things to do then, and then incorporating all the successes in our quarterly meetings.
And I'm not going to be much help on this question. I'm struggling to come up with an example for you.
All right, well, keep on thinking about that, and if something pops into your head, let us know.
Oh, and one more thing on that, I'd like to add on the LEAP committee too. I think another reason it works so well here in Lakeway is that directors and management aren't involved pretty much at all. It's all staff driven. So, and they do a fantastic job. They come up with a chair, a co-chair, and then different departments are included, but management's pretty much out of it. So I think that's also the key to kind of making it work a little bit. Because a lot of people are afraid to bring up certain topics or ideas because a manager's in the room or something else. I think it's a good idea to leave it staff focused, and then if management's needed, they reach out to us and say, yeah, approved, not approved, etc., and then kind of move on from there. So I think that's a big part of why it's so successful here.
So being that you have both won TAMI Awards in this exact area, do you have any advice for folks that are currently working on this year's TAMI Award submissions?
So I would say, so data is key. So, you know, I think I'm not going to speak for Nadine also, but I think those staff surveys are going to be very helpful in getting that, you know, helping you fill out that award, you know, with its successes. People saying, I really like this, and this is great, and the morale's awesome, or whatever. You know, that's important. But your goals, set clear goals, and then make sure that you respond to those goals. Did you accomplish them? You know, what's your data that backs it up? You know, make a nice submission with pictures, any kind of elements for visuals that you can, but as organized as possible is going to help you win that award. So if you're organized, have clear goals, have clear data to kind of back it up, any kind of feedback that you're getting from your staff on, I mean, that really helps to win an award.
I'll echo the data. I mean, I think for this survey in particular, and this award submission that we built out of it, just having that data, 33% of our respondents, which was half of our employee base, said this. Here's what we did about it, and we had numbers for several different examples of that. So I think I'll certainly echo the data piece of that, and then I'll throw in something kind of cheesy and say, think back to what you've done in the last year or so, and think about the things that you were really passionate about, because I think at the end of the day, that passion always kind of shines through, right? It's something that you've dedicated so much time. I'll speak for myself in this survey. I had a pile of books from the library that I couldn't see over my desk whenever I was writing these survey questions. And it's something that I was so immersed in and I cared so much about that I feel like that kind of shines through both in the end result of the project and also in the award submission itself.
And don't be afraid to enter your award and sit on it a little bit, think about it, and come back, because you can come back and redo and re-add until you push your final submission for that award. So start it now, start throwing in those elements, the images, and then just come back to work on it. I mean, you have till the middle of March, but don't wait till the last day. I know Sarah Bustillos might be on this call, so don't wait till the last day, or don't wait till the day after, because you won't be able to submit it. But start working on it now and building it. And, just like Nadine said, I mean, that passion is really part of it. So whatever you're really passionate about it, make it shine in your award.
I see you have a couple of questions in the Q&A. First one was, do you have ideas with no cost? So let's say a city isn't working with any money, but has the same issues that everyone else does. Where should they start, and how can they do that affordably?
Well, some of our things are very low cost or no cost. We do have, we use the materials that we already have on hand to create posters, cards for everybody in the city, or at least their specific department to sign. We do social media posts for them. So those are low cost or no cost ideas that you could start with.
And the LEAP committee pretty much started with no budget at all.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Right.
I mean, we started using, and frankly, I pulled from our PR budget to cover some small amounts that you can, because I was looking at it as, well, this could be public relations in some fashion. I mean, pretty much any kind of PR budget, you can make that kind of claim.
Yeah.
But, those little things, little cards, I think is a good example, but just showing that appreciation for if it's just a staff meeting, and having individuals come up and the department leaders come up and say, here's what my department did this quarter. And then here are some staff members that really made some impact in my department this year.
Mm-hmm.
Just them hearing that in front of their other team and in front of their the rest of the city is really that supersedes any kind of gift card or any kind of other recognition you might get. It's just that praise in front of other staff, in front of council.
Very true. And also even an email from the city manager goes a long way too. I think that shows a great amount of appreciation to read that from leadership.
Yeah, and I know we talked a lot about the newsletters, but including that type of content in the newsletter so that it's kind of there and you can reference it. And I'll speak for myself on days that have been tougher than others. I'll go back and find times when I was praised just to remind myself I can do it. I'll be fine. So I think that kind of stuff is helpful. And then in terms of kind of more overarching organizational things, some of the feedback we got was really wanting to emphasize kind of a more relaxed atmosphere, and an easy change for that was kind of relax our dress code. Obviously mindful of what your job is and who you're meeting with and all that stuff at the director's discretion, but telling people really openly, you can wear jeans, it's okay, kind of went a long way in making people feel okay, I can relax and I can do my job and I can be part of this team. And I think that kind of stuff that sometimes you don't think of as a perk or a benefit does help.
And special days and weeks. So, I mean, and most on this call probably know that Government Communicators Day is this Saturday, it's this Saturday, right? So a lot of cities have made their own proclamations, and the 3CMA website has a great template for you to use for that. But simple things like that, and there's not just Government Communicators Day, there's others that the mayor can make proclamations on, and mayors make proclamations all the time. So just have them fill that out for something special like your city secretary or something else. And that's free, and that gets a lot of that public recognition out there, and that's from the mayor too. So if they announce those in council meetings, which they just did with Government Communicators Day last night here, it was just a nice recognition for our comms team to kind of get that. So, and sometimes communications, as communications professionals, sometimes we're not recognized a lot. We're doing all the recognizing for others, and we're not realizing that we're in this together as well. So we should be able to step up and say, okay, we can congratulate ourselves too. So don't feel embarrassed about it, because I did feel weird about sending my mayor like, hey, here's a draft proclamation. Can you, but only if you're interested in doing it. And he quickly filled that out. And then he added to it, which was even more amazing, because when they read it last night, I was like, oh, wow, he added more to this.
Mm-hmm.
So stuff like that, don't be afraid about even praising yourself as well.
Just to tag on to that, when I won a couple of awards last year from TAMI, my director was like, oh, well, we need to share this with council. And I was like, that's a little cringy. Do we have to? And so they did a little item on it at council, and it was really nice to hear it. I was like real cringy, but no cost to that. So, always let your superiors know about any awards you win. And then something else we did, and Nadine touched on this, is we implemented dress for your day, which is our jeans policy. And still look professional, but you can wear jeans as long as you're not going to a meeting with council or the city manager or anything. But that's done a lot for employee morale, because before we had, well, why does the parks guys get to wear jeans? Well, because they're in the mud, like, come on. But that's done a lot for us too. Doesn't cost anything.
Awesome. So it sounds like we have a couple of questions about how you engage your various committees to help you. So the first question is kind of detail a little more some of the activities that you actually task out. I mean, they've mentioned LEAP here, but Nadine, I know you don't work in a silo. So what kind of activities are you tasking out to colleagues that are participating in this effort? And then how do you keep those committee members fresh? Do you rotate people involved? How do you find them, etc.?
Was that for Nadine or either?
Yes, it's for either.
Or either. Yeah, there we go. So for our, I guess for the keeping the committee kind of fresh, we asked for volunteers. I know Jessica has been chair since it was created 2 years ago. And I also think that it kind of makes the person has to fit that position really well. And Jessica just does a nice job being that HR communication specialist. She's that hybrid between internal comms, because she knows all the staff too. So that's helpful. And yes, we're a population of 20,000, so we don't have, it's easier for us to remember that, but that's really helped keep her as a stable chair.
Right. And then we, people rotate throughout the year. We've had a core group of members, I think 3 that have been, with the program since the beginning. But we encourage people on a regular basis through our staff newsletter and emails, please come join us. Do you have ideas to recognize your fellow coworkers? Come join the LEAP team, and we'd love to hear what you have to say. People drop out too, work gets too busy, and we totally understand that. They're always welcome to come and rejoin whenever they can, but we try to keep it fresh, and we try to keep at least one staff member from each department on the team. Sometimes we're missing 1 or 2 departments, but we're always encouraging them to join in.
And
I think ours is structured very similarly to that, where it kind of rotates through. One thing we're fortunate to have is, as we've talked about with all the buy-in at all the levels, is anytime somebody has an idea, it's kind of we'll throw spaghetti on the wall and see what sticks. If it doesn't work, we don't do it again, right? So that's been really helpful for us too, because it kind of gives everyone a space where they can kind of give different suggestions, and we just see how it works. When it's feasible, of course, you have to be mindful of we just can't do that one, sorry.
And if you create a committee, make sure that you divvy up the responsibilities. It shouldn't just be up to the chair or co-chair to always plan things. Make sure you're making up a committee that's very engaged, because you don't want it to fall on one person. So it should be like each individual in the committee takes a certain day or takes a certain activity. That really helps. Plus, it puts a lot of pressure off of one person having to do everything.
I'll say our team is always willing to help and always looking forward to helping with events. So that's never been an issue with any of our team members, you know, past and present. Everybody's really eager to help. So we're thankful for that.
So related to that, I mean, you were talking about continuing to refresh committee members. Question came in, and I'm going to assume, Melissa, that I'm interpreting your question correctly. How do you increase participation across departments? We know that sometimes it can be really easy to get office staff to participate, but maybe a little harder for field staff or vice versa. How would you make sure that you have equitable participation to the extent possible?
So I'll say that we have directors meetings often. So I really hit our directors pretty hard about, you know, encouraging them to participate in LEAP programs. And also if they have staff members that are, you know, might be of interest that we can maybe reach out to. So even letting the directors kind of like decide, okay, this individual is really engaged, or they want to get more engaged with the city, and then individually just reach out to them, or have the LEAP committee reach out to them to see if they're interested in participating. So I think that's kind of a big focus of that. And just when they see the great work the LEAP committee has done, they want to participate too. So I know you get some people reach out every once in a while for that.
I'll say the people who like to provide a lot of feedback, I always invite them to join us. Say, come on, you have a lot of great ideas, so come join the team.
I think we've done something very similar to kind of at individual department levels. If there's an employee that we recognize usually have lots of great ideas or have lots of feedback, we'll kind of tap them and say, hey, you should participate in this. That's been pretty helpful.
So our committee is just getting started, like literally yesterday is when our city manager told our leadership team about it. And our department actually took an interesting approach, and we're choosing not the most obvious choice of employees. So, you know, I'm always one to jump in and be excited and let's get on board. But we chose our building official to be that individual to serve on our group. So he was actually super geeked to be asked. And he's like, oh, I actually do have some ideas. So maybe tapping into hidden gems might pay off. I'll let y'all know.
That's a great idea. Because sometimes it's not about the position, it's about the personality too. So if you have somebody that's really like engaged in your community, like just gets out there and just a lot of fun, a lot of energy, that's the person you probably want to participate.
But you'll also be surprised too sometimes who wants to join. People you wouldn't expect, and that's great too. It helps them feel involved and gives us a different perspective.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to pull moderator point of privilege and ask all four of you a final question. Here we all are on the line wanting to increase employee morale. You've given us lots of good ideas. Give us your one piece of advice for how do we get started? Because it's all the things that we've talked about, all the things. So at some point you've got to start. What would you recommend?
I think for me, I'll just say, listen. I mean, I think as communications folks, regardless of kind of how we're structured, we're tapped into a lot of different things across the organization. And you'll start hearing those types of, you'll hear the feedback, and you'll hear sometimes excitement drops about projects. So listen to those things and use yourself as an advocate for the organization and say, how do we make this better? And never be afraid to kind of throw those ideas out there and have those conversations. I think that's the start. And then all the other stuff comes with that, then the buy-in from all the levels, from your city management, from your council, because that's also important. But really you got to know what you're starting with, and trying to pick some of that stuff up kind of comes with that.
And start light, you know, just, I mean, you don't have to just start with a full-on committee. Maybe it's just a couple people, and then it just grows from there. And not necessarily having to wait for approval, because this isn't like anything super formal that you have to get approved by council. So this is something where you can start with just a couple people, start very light, maybe start celebrating specific days, and then letting the city management and leadership know what you're doing and showcasing what you're doing. they'll get that buy-in, and then you can probably have a budget by the next year. And by the year after, you might be able to double it. So if you can show those results, that's great, but you pretty much just have to take that leap. I'm plugging. Yeah.
I like it. I like it.
You just have, but you have to take that leap, and sometimes government works very slow. So sometimes you just have to do it and just show it, because this isn't one of those formal processes where it's like, oh, I have to create this whole guideline. You can start very light on something like this without getting like formal approval from council for something like this. So I just say jump in, and you're going to mess up and you're going to make mistakes, but that's the beauty in it, is that you can go back and fix them. So, it's like, and you learn from that. So yeah, I just say, take the dive.
Mine is the same advice. Start very small. I think in the beginning, when we started thinking of this program, we had this grand plan in mind. That became overwhelming. So we took a step back and we said, you know what, let's start small and build our way up. And we have, over the last couple of years, we've built it into a bigger and better program. So that is my advice.
I would just say be enthusiastic, because it's contagious. I mean, if you got people trying to drive employee morale and employee recognition that are just kind of like halfway in, or like, I don't want to be too excited, that's gonna trickle down and impact it all. But if you've got, even just one super excited person, they can really start spreading that around, which Lord knows we all need a little bit more happy in our lives.
And I would like to add one more thing. So consistency is really, really important if this is going to work. So you can't celebrate one department without celebrating another. So I would say plan out a calendar, and Jessica's done a great job on that, and we're happy to share that information as well. She has a form and everything we will put in the drive or wherever we share. But you have to create some kind of plan if you're going to do this, because if you overlook one department or one individual in that process, that could backfire. So just make sure that you have that in place, and that will really, really help you.
Well, awesome. Thank you all. Bailey, thank you for putting together such a great panel. Thank you, Nadine. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Jared. And I expect to see lots and lots of great employee advocacy, employee engagement programs in next year's TAMI Award based on our webinar today. And as we mentioned, this will be posted in the TAMI website in the next day or two, and we'll add resource files when we have those so that you can check back on the website. Look for an email from us about the March webinar that'll be coming soon. And just a plug on behalf of Sarah, who's not on the line, but you do need to actually start working on your TAMI Awards submittals, because that deadline is coming soon. So we can't wait to see what you all have to submit this year and celebrate with everyone at our 50th anniversary conference celebration in San Antonio this June. Until next time, we'll talk to you later. Thank you all so much.
Bye, y'all.